I've put myself on the record many times with this, and I'm sure it's a familiar statement to some of you who are familiar with my work. I'm not one to rank things, in particular, of risking overshadowing complimentary regards to another piece that might be at a same level as another. I don't want to one more time. I've put myself on the record many times in sessions past, and I'm sure many of you who are familiar with my work would acknowledge this. I've stated frequently, I'm not one to rank things. In particular, because I don't want to risk overshadowing complimentary regards afforded to other pieces of a similar equivalency. Not that, again, and my tastes fluctuate too. To be fair to works, like my top favorite one day might not match the next, and maybe it'll return, right? I can't predict where my tastes go, even though I can certainly say, and plus in my heart, I'd say this with respect to Rated R fully. I love all these numbers, as I do Red's library generally. I'm going to deviate, though, from what I normally say in terms of ranking, because I truly feel this was still bleeding, even just in anticipation of returning to it. This piece is my favorite on the record, and might be, in fact, one of my favorite Red pieces ever to cross our library. I mean it. And in particular, the idea of returning back to Rated R, not in the path I foresaw, as I made clear with The Suffering. You can return to that video if you want to understand how we're approaching with a bit of a slight change from before. Unforeseen circumstances, but necessitated just given life is unpredictable. But we are finally returning to Rated R. What I promised you in terms of full album survey, and I deliver on my word no matter how long it takes me. And I think of pieces in particular from this album. I'm looking forward to posting everything. In particular, because so many of you are requesting where the second half of the album is, and I've been meaning to get on top of it. But for ones I look forward to the most, I think Still Bleeding qualifies. And there's been some other standout pieces on this record that I'm like, I really want to get to that one, or this one in particular. Still Bleeding, I think, is the dominant favorite for me, ever since the first listen. And specifically, a reprisal. I have fallen madly in love with this piece. And I'm sure you'll see why when you entertain it yourself. However you approach, again, I've said many times, music is best enjoyed in company, and for a group like Red, I've been waiting for an opportunity to highlight them, and with a full album survey, I knew this would be an opportunity that we're going to take together. And I welcome anyone who approaches, right? Longtime fan or initiate listener. If this is a first encounter for you, I would recommend with Rated R specifically that you humor the first 6 pieces in anticipation and return. It is worth your time, and they'll give you a slight build-up to an emotion as to where this piece hits us. And if you want somewhere to start in terms of the past library to experience yourself, I would recommend anything, pretty much. I've carried their entire library on my phone, 13-year fellowship with this group. Big favorite of mine if in the Christian rock sphere, though again, they have wide appeal elsewhere in different markets, and understandably, the command on rock execution truly is something admirable, to whatever extreme you look at. Vocals are beautiful on this album. Narrative, scoring, wait until you hear the instrumental, and I'll tell you that reprisal journey I took for myself, even though, as I said with The Suffering, I've intentionally stayed away from the second half, given the reintroduction change of status and appearances here, to keep this as fresh of an encounter as possible. But Still Bleeding, whereas most of the other pieces are a fresh re-listen journey, Still Bleeding's not. My first cycle for the album for myself, I rewound this number probably about 5 times or more. It's not just special in isolation, but it's given me a slight change of perception, too, with comments I've given Red in the past. This one's particularly interesting, and we'll get to that in a minute, because I want to get to the number first. And if you happen to be an initiate listener, and this is your first entrance to Red, if you want to start here, that's okay. But again, I would recommend Rated R fully experiencing that in anticipation of what's come before, and then getting to Still Bleeding. But you can pop in if you wish to. Again, music is a subjective experience in how we approach and entertain it. If this is your first track with them, I think it's safe to say, I don't want to speak for you, but I think you'll become an immediate fan. I'm just pretty sure in my opinion on that, because I know what we're getting with Still Bleeding. I can't wait to get to it, and we're going to, right now. We're going to have a conversation on this work, though, after. There's so much to discuss with this one.
I gave you everything, descending underneath, crying out.
Already, I'm back in heaven with the bass again. The mood's perfect. Instrumental tracking. And vocal intermixing with the music. And I know what we're coming to right now. My favorite chorus ever. Oh man. Just perfect.
I know it's just a dream, but it seems so real to me. The walls are closing in.
This one is so fine-tuned. Love it. Everything clicks with this one. It really is like a return to Red Root Survey. So many eras intertwined. Everything is so perfect with this one. The acceleration effect, man. Some of the best builds from him I've ever heard. Telling you, the journey on this one is just so interesting. Everything just hits. My hands are shaking right now. It's such a good experience. I know I'm kind of getting out of my mind with that one on a re-listen to it, but oh man, it might be the one I'm most familiarized to upon entrance again of entertaining Red Rated R fully and returning to the second half. But that is, I like Rated R generally, and any pieces I've noted before, and there are some real standouts on this one, but everything is great. Still Bleeding, though, I think is the triumphant favorite for me. Not just in isolation. This number in every respect, rock root, dominant key that feels quite familiar to Red, some slight synth application, which again, this is, that in particular, I'll come back to. That's what I say a change of perception in terms of how I've recognized Red in the past. It's largely because of the synths and the strings. Isn't the strings atmosphere so great to this piece? I've said many times in terms of becoming a metalhead, favorite landscape for me, though I'm open to really anything, and I keep an open door intentionally on this channel to many artists of different genre mainstays. I have a particular love for symphonic metal. And I've checked out a number of groups in respect, not as many American. I need to dive deeper if there are possibilities in that vein. And if you happen, any of you are knowledgeable on some names that maybe I haven't come across yet, feel free to chime in down below. I always love new paths of introduction, but symphonic metal is a real favorite for me. Again, do not get me started by the European metal market, and you've not ventured down that path before. We spend a lot of time there here, and there's many symphonic metal favorites. The strings precision, though, I didn't call it symphonic metal back then because I was relatively inexperienced with particular metal terminology, especially across subgenres, but this was Red, one of my earliest entrances to becoming a rock fan of where I now sit today, and the strings, that has been so true to their identity since the beginning, with End of Silence and now where we sit, with some fluctuations in the past, right? For example, Release the Panic, that one went more for a pop rock mood, but then with Release the Panic Recalibrated, we returned to that immediately, at least for a selection of the numbers, and that was beautiful. But I've been saying for a while, the strings on this one really shine. The intersection on different Red elements to this, if you want a good window, again, before I go further where I'm intending to, if you are of initiation standing, this, I think, is such a great window into different aspects of their album release eras told in one song. specifically on that chorus and some of the transitions. The verse following the "but it seems so real to me" line, again on that swing back into the chorus. Oh, it's so good. Again, perfect meshing on rock, on musical scoring, specifically with strings involvement. The strings here, it's just so delicate, but you just love every second of it. It's so piercing. As I was saying though, with the synths, and the vocals, too, are fantastic. And the narrative, too, I love the darker ambiance to it. Fits like an album titled Rated R. And we're going to speak about some of the other pieces based on narrative tracking, more specifically with the last 3 numbers, because you really start to see something of where the second half goes. But the visual, too, of Still Bleeding really stands out. Again, there's a bit of a broad application as to how we can interpret the lyrics. Again, music is generally entertained on a subjective lens, and so perhaps when we keep tunes true to their nature, void of artist declared identity, sometimes we are allowed, if we keep them in faith, to perhaps retrofit them in applicability to where we sit. So I could see some different vantage points appearing of Still Bleeding, ones that I recognize myself or others that might be fairly surmised among different listeners. I just truly love this number in terms of, again, its delicate balance and how precise it is. Not just in manifesting a red voice of clear rock roots, but exercising strength to such a degree that, again, I think back on what I've been saying recently with Red and personal favorites. I've noted of Beauty and Rage as my favorite Red album for some time. I realized, though, with this piece, specifically when the synths come in, that drift on the "is this just a dream" line, it was on a re-listen, I recognized this. I didn't notice this on Initiation Encounter when I had filmed those in the beginning, again, of what I anticipated we'd be posting, but have departed from since, apparently. Unforeseen, again, just to reference clearly. I realized it's such a Gone voice, and I now think about it, and I don't think I've given that album the respect it deserves. Though, with Red, I love anything they've put out, but everybody has their particular favorites. And any of the string side, which, let's say in compliment, I get real, not just the Beauty and Rage vibes of the strings precision here, but as well Innocence and Instinct. That one, I love that album too. But, I like everything from this group, but I have to say, like, specific albums stand out to my mind. To different extremes. I didn't notice this with Surrogates, but specifically the dominance of voice on the synths. That feels different. But now that I really think about it, that has been true to their work, but it's sort of a background thing. Gone was probably the most prominent in that respect. I don't think I've credited it fairly. Gone, I have to say, I think for me on voice, is at an even level with of Beauty and Rage, and perhaps Innocence and Instinct too. I love how Still Bleeding completely changed my orientation of view on Red. And just, again, in comment respect, I might like everything they've put out, but my top favorites, there actually seems to be a bit of an equivalency. I love this number, though. Man, standout on the album, if not my favorite, and certainly one of the top achievements in their library. I truly love it. And again, every piece I've been waiting to get to in terms of being able to share my thoughts with you in our album survey together. It's a wonderful experience. And to do so with Red, I have waited for an opportunity. And for a number like Still Bleeding, you can't miss it. Oh, this number is my favorite. I love it. I know. I'm departing from my common rules. Don't rank things, but I'm like, I can't help it with this one. It's just so good. You want a tight, definitive Red voice, told over different eras. Again, split traits pulled from different aspects, compiled together. Still Bleeding is such a precise window on that. I love this number so freaking much. Oh, man. It's an experience, isn't it? I would imagine many of you Red fans would concur, not to speak for you, but for any initiate listeners, there's just such a clear window to their ability. I love this number. And the conclusions, the drifts on the unclean, the linger, it's beautiful. Every trait to this absolutely works. I'd love to hear if there's a concurrence of opinion on that down below. And again, from whatever vantage point you take. Longtime fan, of course you're welcome. And I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Which one's your favorite in terms of their library? And does Still Bleeding hit that achievement level? Or any of you who are fresh listeners? What do you think on that? You know, any other metalheads in the... Again, music can be enjoyed by anybody. You don't have to be a metalhead or a rock fan, I think, to enjoy Red and the capability of their work. Anyone can approach a song like Still Bleeding and sense that precision, the execution strength. What I love about this group, and I've followed for 13 years, or a little over, is told so beautifully by Still Bleeding. I love this song. Ever since my first experience, I've not been able to shake it. It's almost nostalgic for me, right? I think back to early Red exposure roots, and maybe years later down the line. Different eras, different album releases, general enjoyment on many repeat listens. Still Bleeding has that capability. I just love the voice on this one, whether it is in the instrumental side or the narrative or the vocals, the strings, the synths, the balance of the number, everything clicks. It is a precisely attuned piece, and I respect that energy. It's a favorite of, I may even say it's probably a favorite for me in the symphonic metal landscape. It just has, again, it might be a bit of an evolved form and bringing in some different types of traits. It has a more unique facade, maybe with different element mixture, because symphonic metal can definitely take on a more dominant orchestral route. That's in part why I love about this. Just the strings here on this one are like, they're top tier master execution level for me. I'm not trying to exaggerate. Again, I try to keep myself somewhat tempered, but I literally get like an out of mind experience with this. I love Still Bleeding. It is a top tier favorite for me within, I want to be fair to what I say in terms of not ranking things to not risk overshadowing other works of equal regard, or anything of their library, but Still Bleeding, it's one of the top favorite Red songs for me. It's just perfect Red voice. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.